Welcome to the second installment of the For the Love of the Game podcast. My name is Jefferson Belfort, and this is Brian Hernandez. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing good. It's our second episode. Also, I wanted to say this before we actually started. For anyone listening, right now we're going to be putting all our podcasts on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, pretty much anywhere you will listen to your podcasts. We're going to be on there. But at the same time, we have a YouTube channel. So if you want to go to our YouTube channel, just look up our name, For the Love of the Game Pod, and you will be able to find our YouTube channel. So we have full episodes there as well as some clips. So if you don't have time to watch the full episode, you'll see maybe 2 or 3 clips a week. And yeah, so I wanted to put that first before anything else.
We'll also be active on Instagram and Twitter as well. Stay tuned for those, but let's get right into it. Some of the topics that we are going to hit today is starting with the Ben Simmons fiasco that's still continuing. JJ Redick and his untimely retirement, and Kyrie Irving and his ongoing saga right now, and then the cat slash TWolves situation right now. So let's start off with the Ben Simmons. We had some conversations in the last podcast about this, and as we go by the days, it's only getting more complicated, more interesting. Everyone has an opinion. Everyone has a crazy hot take on Ben Simmons right now, and I think this is a perfect time to start like unpacking some of the things that we're hearing, and then just realistically think once again, like what is the end goal here? Let me ask you that too, Brian. What do you think is before we get too far into this, what do you think the end goal is of all of this infighting that's happening on the Sixers right now?
So I think the end goal, I want to say it's pretty clear. And in the sense by that, I mean, both of these parties want a trade. They both want to separate. They want a divorce. They don't want to be there anymore. The problem is the timing. The timing of Ben Simmons, apparently, as the report from Woj was saying, that he is not going to play, Ben Simmons does not want to play another game for the Sixers. He does not want to show up to training camp. And the Sixers organization was just saying a few days ago that they would love to see Ben Simmons show up to training camp. And now this is creating a huge problem. I don't know if you want to go into a little more or give you some of your feedback on some of this stuff.
As we increasingly learn more and more about the situation, it just gets me more upset, and then leads me right back into what I was saying last week. Is that we're sitting here, we're looking at this situation, and it just has me looking at the organization as a whole rather than the player.
Yeah.
Granted, Ben Simmons is not handling this in the best way. But for being an organization to allow for something like this to fester, you got to look at yourself as well, right? We're now seeing reports where you see Doc Rivers is now saying that he wants to convince Ben Simmons to come back. But 3 months ago, you could not say simply that you still believe in this guy. Like it just feels like we're already too far removed from that point of trying to reconcile, and like this is just not going to be a nice breakup. It's not going to be handled right. Someone's going to get the bad hand. It seems like either one person's going to get the bad hand or both sides getting the bad hand in the situation with Ben Simmons and the Sixers. And then another aspect to it that is now festering from this is that you have all of these sports pundits that are adding to, hey, Ben Simmons might go here, Ben Simmons might go there. The interesting one you're hearing now is Kyrie for Ben Simmons. And I don't know why anyone would believe that would be the move that would happen right now. I still believe in Ben Simmons' talent. I don't think that he's completely washed, but his confidence, his game has taken a hit because of what's happening right here, and it's only going to be worse if they can't get a clean break on this situation.
Yeah, I think exactly what you're saying of Ben Simmons still has talent. And I think all the GMs around the league also see this, and they also believe that his talent is there. And there's something to still salvage from all this. But although he has talent, there's some glaring red flags in the lack of development in his. He came into the league as an extremely NBA ready player, and throughout his 4 or 5 year career, he's actually gotten worse over the over the years, which is not what you want to see from a young star player. Like you're saying, the Nets situation of like the Kyrie, Ben Simmons for Kyrie, I think that's yeah, I wouldn't look too far into all that because, like you're saying, it's just nonsense. But also to touching your point of someone's going to get dealt a bad hand. And what it's looking like right now as it's shaping up, that the Sixers are going to get dealt a bad hand. Because, like you mentioned of Doc Rivers, before the playoffs, this man, or at the end of the playoffs, this man was so upset that this man is a veteran. He knows exactly the things you're supposed to say and not say in post-game interviews. And he goes, I don't know if Ben Simmons can win a championship. I don't know if he's a championship player. And now you want him back on your team when clearly the Sixers are trying to win a championship. This is what they're trying to do, is they're trying to play some regular season games to raise Ben Simmons' value up. Because the last viewing anyone's had seen from Ben Simmons is the atrocity that's happened in the NBA semifinals. What happened with the Hawks? Like that, not the semifinal, or the conference semifinals. That matchup, he looked terrible, and everyone's seeing or thinking that Ben Simmons is a terrible player due to recency bias, but we all know he's actually not that bad.
Yep. And you know, there's a lot of players that are dealt a bad hand in the sense of like recency bias.
Yeah.
You know, and it's always going to be a part of the game. We can chalk it up that that's going to be, it's always going to be there, right?
Yeah.
But at least for how I feel about the whole situation is typically when you do fall into a narrative as a player, you see those guys chalk it up as, hey, I'm going to put my head down and I'm going to start grinding.
Mm-hmm.
Ben Simmons is taking the complete opposite approach, which is not making it easier to defend him. But nor is Ben Simmons in the wrong, which makes this such a unique and like crazy situation too. Ben Simmons is getting lambasted by his own coach after a series. Granted, he did some stuff that costed him a series, but granted, how many players are in the league that haven't slipped up in the playoffs, you know, or didn't show up when they needed them the most, right? It's a little bit, like I said, of looking at yourself. The Sixers have to look themselves in the mirror. It's a little bit of Ben Simmons has to grow up, and it's a little bit of you know, like at least having some allies on the team, man. Like I don't see anyone on the team advocating for Ben Simmons, which once again makes this an even more unique, weird situation where you don't have Joel Embiid out there crazy supporting, saying, "Hey, that's my guy. Like we're gonna figure this out." We've seen in the past where a star has been disgruntled and a teammate comes up and says, "We'll do anything to make this work. Figure this out." He's going through his whatever. We'll figure this out as a team. There's no one supporting him on that end, so it's really weird right now with that situation.
I actually never heard anyone talk about that so far. Like that's nowhere, but like that's such a telling thing. No one on that team is saying, "I want Ben Simmons back." We see, like, look at the situation. I mean, we talk about this so many times, but look at the situation with Dame in
Mm,
Portland. Well, sure, Dame wants to be there, but at the same time, we all know eventually Dame is probably going to be traded. But you have players like Nurkic, CJ McCollum. They're all coming out being like, we want Dame here. We believe we can do something. Dame is our guy. This is that, this and that. But on the Sixers, they're supposed to have a great relationship in Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons. And you look at them now, your number one guy is not like, oh, he's gonna show up in training camp. Don't worry about it, or none of this. It's crazy. And training camp is so soon that we're hearing nothing from these guys. It's
yeah.
mind blowing.
And Brian, one of my favorite pastimes to do is go into teams Reddits and just
Oh,
go and see um, what's going on. So as soon as
yeah,
we started talking about this topic, I wanted to dive into the Sixers Reddit, see what the fans are saying over there. And granted, obviously there's some jokes in there. There's a little bit of truth to everything. But
hmm,
like it leads me right into the next part about this Ben Simmons thing is that you look at a guy like Ben Simmons, he's not beloved.
oh,
It's That's an issue. That's an issue. Is that you have a guy that is Joel Embiid that is greatly beloved by the
yep,
Sixers, and he's bought into the city. A he's a he's a part of the fabric of Philadelphia at this point now, right? Like it's another issue that you have to encounter now with the Ben Simmons thing. Before this issue became a rise and Ben Simmons said his piece and said that he wants to go. I I can't say that there's ever been there's been a moment where I felt like someone was advocating for for Ben Simmons in that nature, saying he's going to figure it out. Like from Sixers fans, like you don't
yeah,
hear that, right? They knew Ben Simmons is a great player. They love what they see out of him, but it was they are quick to let him out, like kick him right off the boat. Than they are to cheer him on, And then with Embiid, it's the complete
hmm,
opposite, And it's very telling. But back into what I was seeing on the Reddit post was I noticed that there was some mentioning of like Daryl Morey and Ben Simmons. There's been a fracture in their relationship since there was a meme that was posted a
oh,
couple
no
months
way.
ago where once again Daryl Morey gets in trouble because of something on Twitter, but but there was a post on Twitter where it was comparing like a virgin versus a Chad. It said, and then they were referencing Ben Simmons as the virgin, and then they were referencing Devin Booker as the Chad, and Daryl Morey liked that. And
Oh,
there's a lot of Sixers
wow,
fans that are believing that this is one of the other things
wow,
that comes into play into this situation. But it goes back to what we said last week is that um, Ben Simmons has a really fractured like ego, I would say
yeah,
is the word. Um, and anything you throw at him, since he's joined the league, he is ready to react to it. He does not take anything on the chin. He's always ready to react, and he's always ready to be pity about it.
yeah.
So I could see how this could have festered into what it is now, where he doesn't trust the organization. He feels that people don't feel like they trust him in the organization, and now because of that, he wants to be gone. You know?
Yeah, I think there's something very key they were saying there of like how they take this criticism and how they kind of bounce back from this. Because I think I saw something from Joel Embiid specifically of he was saying a few years ago when I think he had like a bad finals or not bad playoffs. Sixers fans were all on him, exactly how they're on Ben Simmons right now, and they were crazy after him. And he was like, "This is how Sixers fans are." Joel Embiid is saying, like, "This is how Sixers fans are," but these are our fans, like we love them. And then, as you see, this man bounced back. He last year he was second in MVP voting. And as you see, everyone now loves Joel Embiid in Philly. But and that's how Embiid took it. You can see Embiid is the ultimate competitor. When everyone makes fun of when you saw Embiid crying after Kawhi hit that shot in the playoffs, and everyone makes fun of that. But that's to me, when I see that, that's like pure passion. He looks funny there, but that's pure passion. And this is someone that actually really cares about this game. And then so you can see he worked that hard to get better, and he took that criticism and all that. As you see now with Ben Simmons, he is kind of taking it what looks like to be the worst way you can. And I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of this fan backlash is a reason why he's like forcing his way out now. Is it the whole piece of the pie, like you're saying, with Maury and all this, him liking that tweet and what Doc said? There's a lot of things that come together to make Ben Simmons also want to ask out. But the fans, I'm sure, are a big piece of this pie as well.
It's it's so many layers to go through, and that's what makes it such a compelling thing to, like, quick to look at, quick to find out about, and try to figure out it. And honestly, it's the biggest NBA drama right now.
Oh yeah.
And it's another thing I wanted to dive into that I don't know if you got some time to look into it, but Doc Rivers actually was on First Take, I believe, either this morning or it was yesterday. And he went on to speak on how he was misrepresented when he spoke about the Ben Simmons remark. But it's stuff like that that gets me upset, because clearly I'm not one to just react to a headline and then say, hey, that's true, that's facts, that's what it is, right? I sat and I listened to Doc Rivers out of his own mouth when questioned and asked if his point guard is a championship caliber point guard. He said, I don't know at this time if he is that. That is the ultimate shot into the stomach after a Game 7 loss. He could have said a no comment. He could have said, hey, there's stuff that we love about Ben. There's so many ways he could have handled that better. And to now try, to have crocodile tears is just like, it's ridiculous, honestly, to me. And, it's another factor that just shows, Ben Simmons really is. It's not only Ben Simmons on this side of it that is the problem. It is the Sixers as well. And for me, it's really, I'm gonna keep on saying it's not gonna end well. And I love to see it. I love to see it.
I mean, I'm sure as like a Nets fan, and then you had Philly at the top of the conference last year, like they're imploding right now. And this has to be like one of your biggest competitions. Just seems like they're probably not going to be right there. They're not going to be as good as they were last year because they're not going to get fair value for Ben Simmons. We'll see what happens, but very crazy. All right. We've talked about Ben Simmons so much in these last few times. Oh, you got bored?
I got one thing. This is fresh now. This is so fresh right here that it's another aspect of the
breaking news.
Ben Simmons situation is apparently the Cavs are ready to throw the kitchen sink to get Ben Simmons.
Oh,
Sexton, Garland, Okora, even I think even Evan Mobley. No one's deemed as untouchable.
So what is interesting about that? So watching the moves that the Cavs made, did they trade for somebody recently? They did something recently where Lauri Markkanen, right? Lauri Markkanen's on the Cavs now. They just signed Lauri Markkanen to a pretty big contract. They just signed Jared Allen to a monstrous contract. You just drafted with the number 3 pick, Evan Mobley, a power forward slash center, mostly a power forward. And now you have two guys that you're paying to pretty much be starters over him. There has to be some truth there. I'm sure there's talks. But why, as Joel Embiid, do you want these guys?
That's what I'm saying.
Are these championship players here?
It's what type of package are they throwing to the Sixers, right? Obviously, I don't think this is the most appealing team to throw something at them, but like, I'd love to see what their package could possibly look like.
Yeah.
But right now, still not appealing, but it's interesting. It's definitely interesting to hear within the hour that that's what they're talking about. Is like they're ready to throw the whole kitchen at the Sixers. You know,
and then it goes back to like Ben Simmons only saying, "I want to play for California teams." Like, do they ignore that? I mean, he doesn't have a no trade clause, right? And he has 3-4 years left on his contract because he just signed his extension. So they don't have to trade him to anywhere he really wants to go. It's just, I guess, more like the player movement thing of like, you want to make these players happy. So, wow, that's crazy. That is crazy. I'm sure once more news breaks on this, we can cover this on another pod. But for now, let's move on to the Kyrie situation. I know you wanted to talk about the Kyrie situation. I actually wanted to. We didn't go thoroughly on this. Is this Kyrie situation about what we're talking about? Of you mentioned before, like the Ben Simmons thing that we heard. Is it? Go into it, please.
So there's a lot to add because there's different parts that have been coming from the week, right?
Yes.
First one that I want to hit on is definitely the situation with him and Nick Wright. As you can tell at this point, Kyrie is not your conventional NBA player.
Yes.
He doesn't want to be labeled a certain way. He doesn't want to be thought of a certain way.
Mm-hmm.
Granted, I believe Kyrie has moments where it's very questionable what he's thinking or what he's saying or what even does it even make sense what he's saying, right? The reason why I wanted to discuss Kyrie today is because Nick Wright a couple days back, actually. I said a couple weeks, but it was like 8 days, probably like 8 days ago. Give or take. He wrote something on his Twitter about Kyrie and the trade rumors of if Kyrie was traded, that he would retire. And then Kyrie went on to post a GIF of a puppet and laid that right underneath the Nick Wright post. And from there, it led on to Kyrie posting a little bit more. I got a direct quote of what Nick Wright proceeded to say after that is, Kyrie, if you're saying you didn't say you'd retire if you were traded, then your beef is with your representation, not with me, because you and I both know that's what they've told people. So then after that, Kyrie responds and goes, the puppet doesn't know he's a puppet. And then proceeds to send another gift that says, listen to your master. So greatly, it has been a fun time on NBA Twitter lately to see all of these funny stories and see this craziness that's happening. But the reason why I wanted to bring this up is it's leading me to, I had this conversation offline with a few other individuals, and I wanted to bring it to you too, is that I'm starting to believe that out of all the leagues, all professional leagues, if anyone has like either a marred past, or like they have a murky history with certain things? Are they just not, as in Kyrie's situation, not entwined with the same things that everybody else is thinking? It affects their careers. And we've seen how it has this type of thought process changes Kyrie's um perspective in the league greatly. It's not just this, it's not these little
Mm-hmm.
things that made people feel how they feel about Kyrie, but it was led to a perception in my mind of like Kyrie's not as good as he really is in my mind. And another example I wanted to use off of that as well was thinking of how Carmelo got a bad rap, and
Mm-hmm.
it changed 3 years in his career just off of perception. In other sports, you really do not see that same situation. And I don't want to dive into too deep, but like you
Yeah.
take even like the Trevor Bauer situation that's happening in baseball. I think Trevor Bauer, if given another opportunity, it would be easier for him to rehabilitate his image
Mm-hmm.
in baseball than it would be for Kyrie to ever rehabilitate his image in basketball. I don't know how you feel about that, but that was one of the things that I
Yeah.
wanted to fixate on this like conversations that he's having and
Yeah.
poking fun at Nick Wright.
It's pretty funny that you say that about like Trevor Bauer can fix his image a lot more. And it for basketball, as we see, these guys are more, they have bigger personalities. They're more out there. And I heard, I think it was, I don't know if he still is, like a part owner, was like on a podcast I was listening to of the Kings. He was a part owner of the Kings, and he was talking about like what he looks for in investments and all this stuff for sports. And he was talking about of like when you look at baseball players, football players, and all that, the reason why those athletes aren't as prominent is because of their hats, their helmets, things that are covering their face. You don't actually see them all the time during the game, and it's easy. Like think about it in baseball. We're not. I mean, with a pitcher, we're looking at a pitcher more often, but like no one's really looking at the outfielder that often. We only see him when he bats or he catches the ball, and stuff like that. So these guys, we don't actually get to know them as much as we do as basketball players, where basketball players is 5-on-5. We see these guys all the time. We see their outfits all the time. We're talking about what they're wearing when they're going into and like what they're eating, what they're posting on social media. Like we actually care about these people more than other sports. And like you're saying, when more people kind of have this perception of you, and I agree with you. I kind of feel like the NBA or maybe the NBA media kind of paints Kyrie more as a villain. And they only talk about all the bad stuff that he does. Where is it really bad? I guess. I mean, he had this stuff last season where he left the team for some points. They talked about before a long time ago when him and LeBron didn't get along together. Talked about the stuff that happened in Boston where he says, "Oh, I want to come back at the beginning of the season," and then halfway through the season, he's like, "Get me out of here." That's what they talk about, and they kind of vilify Kyrie, but they don't talk about all the stuff that he does about donating and all the. He does a lot of stuff outside of basketball that's really helpful and culture wise, and it's really surprising to see that. And like you're saying, when they kind of vilify him and talk bad about him all the time, your perception is kind of, oh, this guy isn't as good as we thought. And just recently, when you brought up about this Kyrie situation, at first I thought this was going to be like I mentioned before, the Kyrie Ben Simmons kind of trade talk stuff. So I was just trying to look at Kyrie's numbers to compare to Ben Simmons, and just looking at Kyrie's numbers, I was like, oh my god, this guy is a monster. Like no one talks about him being this good, and like whenever I watch Kyrie play, every single time I watch Kyrie play, I'm like, my goodness, this guy is so good. Like no one talks about it. looking at his numbers from. So I was trying to compare Ben Simmons and Kyrie in 2019. So I mean, this one was. It's probably not the best numbers I can grab, but like just they're very similar to 2020. But like 27 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1.4 steals, shooting close to 40% on 3-pointers. Like this man is dominating. It's crazy.
Yep. And you know what? Since you already saw the stats,
Yeah.
but I wanted to play a game out of this because
Okay.
it just to show how I think this perception game has done something in people not really appreciating the talent that this guy has. Because I'm gonna give you three players, 3 stat lines. I'm gonna give you their games played in the season. I'm going to give you their 50, 40, 90 splits in the sense of not 50, 40, 90. I mean, their field goal, their 3-point percentage, and then their free throw percentage, and then their points.
Okay.
First player played 52 games, was shooting around 51% from the field, nearly 40% from the 3-point line, and then 88% from the free throw line, and then was averaging close to 25 points. Next player played 51 games, was averaging 51%, was shooting 37% from the 3-point line, and then shot 85% from the free throw line and played and scored 28 points. Close to 29, 28.5, so close to 29. And I'm rounding up for most of these.
Yeah.
And then the last player is played 54 games. He shot 50%, close to 51% from the field. So 50.6, 40% from the field, and then 92% from the free throw line, and was scoring 27 points per game. Those 3 players, like who? I'm gonna give you 3 names.
Okay.
You know what? I'm just gonna say those names.
Okay. Just
Those
say that,
3 players. Those 3 players was the first one was Kawhi Leonard.
Ooh.
The second one was Joel Embiid, and then the third one was Kyrie Irving.
Damn.
And yet, not once did you hear Kyrie Irving was mentioned in MVP conversation. But yet, he was playing he played more games than Joel Embiid this year.
That's crazy.
Let that sink in. Like we've talked about the 2 weeks he took off. Granted, Kyrie took 2 weeks off, but he actually did not get injured during the season this year.
Yeah.
That was one thing I wanted to keep in mind too. But the guy was having a spectacular year, and he's in the middle of his prime. And the way how this guy is talked about and his game is perceived in the league is with media pundits is just it's like the guy is only scoring 10 points per game. And it just baffles me. It baffles me, honestly.
Yeah, it's crazy because like the media, I listen to a lot of different just basketball podcasts in general, and everyone talks very poorly of Kyrie. And it got to the point where, like I was mentioning, for myself, I was even like, oh, Kyrie, we all know Kyrie's good, but he's like, what, like 21 points, maybe like 2 assists, 4 rebounds. Like that's kind of what I was having in my head. But then really just looking at his numbers, that's insane. And then I also had the same exact what you're saying of I had the perspective of he's missing all these games, but he played more games than Kawhi and Joel Embiid. That's insane.
Exactly.
That is insane. And it just goes to show of like how the media portrays one of the best players in the NBA right now.
Exactly. And then that's where now can lead right into the whole Ben Simmons situation. I think it's laughable to consider that the Nets would give up Kyrie Irving in the prime of his career for Ben Simmons. Literally, this might be his lowest point in his career, and confidence-wise, right? I don't think it fits. I I don't think he helps. He does help the Nets greatly on the defensive end of it, right? Of the game. But you have one guy that is going to seamlessly become a mismatch on the field, on the floor. With Kyrie, you don't have that issue. Some of the issues that the Nets were having, much like we said in the last podcast, were addressed over the summer. To do something like bring in a Ben Simmons, who's already now dealing with a fractured confidence, um, it would not make sense to have that around a championship team, or championship aspiring team as the Nets at this point.
Yeah, exactly what you're saying. It doesn't make sense for the Nets. It's actually bad for them to do this trade. What I was um so like I was kind of saying before with I was preparing to try to defend Ben Simmons for Kyrie isn't as crazy as you think.
Mm.
And the main the main way I could actually trick myself into this is thinking. So right now, if Jeff, with the three Nets superstars, how do you stack rank them in terms of importance? It's
As
tough.
of
Yeah.
it definitely is gonna. It's definitely tough. It's like pulling teeth, but
Yeah.
it 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 easily is. And I would say before I say this list, importance is different than better in my mind.
Okay.
Importance, I have Kevin Durant at 1.
Hmm.
I have Kyrie Irving at 2, and then I have James Harden at 3. The reason why, and I'm sure there's going to be people that are upset with like Kyrie being over James Harden, but I think Kyrie is the element, like the pull to your heart. Like he's the emotional piece of like being a part of that Nets team. Him having that background, that roots laid in on the Nets. That's why every time when I hear people question or say stuff about, hey, the Nets are going to get rid of Kyrie, I just I know it's like it really is just hot air that's being passed around because I know the Nets would not do something like that unless either A, Kyrie is too much of a problem to handle, or second, it's it's a deal you can't turn down, right?
Yeah.
Like if a guy like Kawhi comes on the market and you're trying to trade for Kawhi, granted, I would kind of be upset, but it makes sense when you give up a piece like Kawhi for Kyrie Irving, right?
Mhm.
But that's why I say his importance is more of a pull to the emotions of Nets fans. And
So
then mhm.
I don't
and
want to
then
cut you off too much. So actually, go please.
and then James Harden, in my mind, in importance in that sense is his importance is more of built around what he brings in value to the game each and every day. All of them bring that side to it, right? That's what how I feel about it is that they all bring that aspect.
Mhm.
But James Harden, he curates the game, right? He orchestrates the whole team. So yes, I could see where people would say that that person, that type of person, should be over another type of individual in that situation. But I still don't. I still think it's James Harden. I mean Kyrie Irving over James Harden.
Okay. Yeah, that's. I think both those guys. There's an argument for both ways. It's a lot closer than you would think. And like you said, there's importance. Uh, Curious. So you say importance and better are different. Would you have James Harden in a list of who's the best players instead of who's the most important players? Would you have James Harden as number two on that list?
Unequivocally.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
almost at that point where you ask, is he as good as Kevin Durant? You
Yeah.
know, James Harden has shown a level of being that leader where you say yes, like you could put him right up there as like 1A, 1B with Kevin Durant and James Harden.
Yeah. It's I mean, just look at the things that he was just doing last in the regular season last year. James Harden was insane. Constant 40 point triple doubles and all that stuff. It was pretty mind blowing to see, especially the trade package they got. But to go into the trade package, so the reason why I asked this and the reason why I brought this up was because before the Rockets went with the Nets package, what apparently the reports are saying, the package that the Philly offered was Ben Simmons, Matisse Thybulle, and like a first round pick and some other stuff for James Harden. And if you look at it, the value is actually better for the Rockets at the end of the day. They probably should have took that trade. But I'm just kind of saying of like, that was what you can get, or that's a package you can get for James Harden. And then you look at it, it's like, okay, now Kyrie, we had James Harden better than Kyrie. They're very close, but we have them better. You can kind of make an argument somewhere in there of like, okay, Ben Simmons for Kyrie isn't actually as crazy as you think, with adding more stuff in there, but it's actually kind of closer than you think. This goes back to the recency bias of Ben Simmons. Like we have him way lower than what he really is, and because look at his value last season and middle of last year, he was one of the he's one of the best defensive players in the league, one of the rising stars in the league, and yeah, I don't think that trade is actually as crazy as it seems.
So let me see if I got this right.
Okay.
You're saying if it's not a 1-to-1 trade,
Yeah.
if it's we're assuming that the money matches up, right? When we say 1-to-1 in that sense. But with other assets moving as well, it's not that bad of a trade. I agree. In that mindset, yes, I agree. I think once again, pulling to the heart of the team, I think that fractures what the Nets are if you do give away Kyrie, though. But it's not as bad as, like you said, as you mentioned, of a trade. It's not preposterous. Let's put it as that.
That's all I wanted to hear. Because like when everyone first hears about Ben Simmons and Kyrie, it's like, this is absurd. This is not even close. But then you kind of dig into it and you really kind of think about it. And that's what I was like, adding the little more, the things that you could have gotten for James or the things that was offered for James Harden, if you just replace James Harden and Kyrie, it's actually not the craziest deal. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting. Do you want to go into JJ Redick now?
Yeah, let's get right into JJ Redick. So with JJ Redick is definitely one of those guys in the leagues that as you watch the game more and more, you have a newfound like appreciation for what he is, looking at what he's doing, and like I would say he's like one of those guys that inspires you to want to be able to podcast and be able to convey your opinions in this platform in this way. But being that sharpshooter from Duke, watching him translate that game into the league where he got his start with the Magics and going crazy on that team, and then seeing him just move from team to team. Another notable team, the Clippers. It's just he's cemented in like my history of my like childhood thoughts of like the game. And he may not have been the most impactful or the greatest player of his time, but he's definitely someone that you look back and you think like JJ Redick was a big part of that.
JJ Redick. It goes back to what we're saying about our recency bias. And if you look at a lot of times when players are retiring, we kind of remember their last maybe 3-4 years that they're playing in the league, which JJ Redick is 37 years old. His last 3-4 years, even though he's a shooter, it's still they're not as good as he was before. But if you really go back and to look at like his career, you mentioned the things he was doing at Duke, the things he was doing with the Magic, and with the Clippers, and especially with Philly. Those Clippers in Philly years are kind of more surprising than you probably remember. Of He was one of the most important pieces on those teams. As you know, if you take away those superstars that they had at the time, for the Clippers, with Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan, and Chris Paul, and all that, if you take those three guys away, the next guy is JJ Redick. And then when you go to Philly and you have Joel Embiid and all that, the next guy, JJ Redick. And if just looking at his numbers from his years with the Clippers, I mean, his 17 season career, that's extremely impressive. Most NBA players don't even get to that point. And then his 17 years of playtime, he shot 41% from the 3-point range. That's insane. And then with the Clippers and Philly, he averaged like 17.6 points, like 18 points. It's pretty damn impressive to see what he was able to do throughout his career. And did you get a chance to listen to his podcast announcement when he retired?
No, I still haven't yet. I definitely want to give it a listen. One of my friends was telling me about it, that I should give it a listen, but haven't got to it yet.
Okay, yeah, I just wanted to ask because it's pretty insightful to hear what he was talking about. I was listening to it earlier today, and he was kind of saying, could he have played a few more years? Sure, but he just kind of realized that this is probably the best time for him to retire. And also, if you think about it, like COVID, he was mentioning, was actually probably expedited all this because of all his experiences that he went through last year and being away from his family and all that. Like, to him, when he was mentioning that, was actually really important. And it's cool to see, like, stepping away from basketball, it's very tough for these guys to, they have a family and they're away for their family for pretty much the entire year, and when they're with their family, they're probably practicing the entire time, and they don't really get to raise their family. And it was really inspiring to me hearing him talk about, like, now I get to, take my kids to school, help around the house with my wife, do all this kind of stuff, and then follow other passions he wants. It's really crazy. It's really awesome. I respect JJ Redick a lot, and looking forward to hearing more of his podcast now that he can probably put some more time into that.
No, I agree. I I don't want to sound too corny, but like it really comes down to like what our podcast name is, For the Love of the Game.
Mm-hmm.
Like they have a love for this game that got to such a point where they got to fulfill their dream, right?
Yeah.
They're fulfilling their dream. And then once you're fulfilling that dream, you also still remember that there's a part of life outside of this dream. And you just saying that about COVID and how it heightened and expedited that process for him, I understand that. Like, after what we had to go through this last year and a half, I don't think there's one player in the league in any facet of life that isn't sitting back rethinking how they want to do things for the rest of their lives. So kudos to him for making that decision. And I know he at the very end he fancied a couple teams, being close to home, and you realize that a lot of his decision making was built around being close to home. So I do appreciate the player, appreciate the man even more with JJ Redick in that sense.
Well said. Well said. So
And
let's
then now,
move on. Yes, please go
on to the next bit of drama.
finale.
It's been a very drama filled episode. But the next drama or saga in the NBA story is the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Karl-Anthony Towns situation. So last night, Karl Towns tweeted, WTF. You guys know what I'm inferring when you hear those letters. As he heard that the team was going to be dismissing the president of basketball operations, Garson Rosa. Um, Rosa has been with the team for some time now, but and I wanted to drop this news of why he got fired. The
Yes.
Timberwolves internally have said that the that the firing is not being done because of performance, but because there was an affair between
Ooh.
Rosa and a fellow staffer who both of them were actually married, and they were caught last Saturday on an outing where the team paid for a couple tickets for players and coaches. They say Pablo Prigioni was actually in attendance as well.
My man.
I don't know why they had to reference that.
I know.
Pablo was there. I know he's the assistant coach, but I
Yeah.
don't understand the real relevance of bringing
Pablo's a
him up.
legend.
But they were seen actually being very flirtatious and at one
Whoa.
instance actually kissing, and those photos were actually sent to Bleacher Report. So due to that,
Wow.
with new management, new ownership in the Timberwolves, I guess Alex Rodriguez said, "Get out of here." And
Wow.
yeah, he's Rosa's got his pink slip, and it's very interesting how now once again another person that's tied
Yeah.
to this whole Ben Simmons saga, we're now going to have to see it through with a different management, a different viewpoint of how they even feel about Ben Simmons. But what is your thoughts on hearing all of that?
Wow. That is insane. The fact that they're doing this at I guess, a work sponsored event, you can say, and they're both married, doing this in public, which is very bold of them. I hope they're both gonna be happy afterwards after all this. I'd assume she's probably fired too. I don't know. That is insane, and it goes to show, like, this guy's been there for a while, so they just got some new management. It's not the new management's fault. It's actually probably best for them because new management, they're gonna want their people there. They're it was probably, looking at it now, they're kind of like, oh, now we can get our guy in here, and they're probably kind of happy about it. That's just, and also, I mean, just look at like the moves Minnesota has made the last couple of years. They're not the most well-run team, so if anything, it's probably best for them. It's just very shocking to hear, like, that's how it happened.
Yeah. And then you know what makes this such an interesting situation, and I'm not appealing to any of the moral sides of this. You have your own opinions of what you feel about Rosa on the outside. That's your choice.
Yeah, yeah.
But the thing is, um, the team has said that they did not violate any internal policies,
Oh, okay.
but it was a choice by the incoming owners that they plan to relieve him. And
Mm,
due to that, you could now see that Garson was actually someone that was well received
yeah.
from the team. And this actually caught the rest of the team by surprise to see that he's going away. I know he's been very integral on the team's interest. They've been saying he's been a big part of like propelling move to get Ben Simmons on this team.
Mhm.
So I don't know how that changes this situation and where does their mindset change from that point as well. But now, once again, we've had this conversation with frustrated players, right, and appeasing them.
Mhm.
Now you have a situation where you're now putting Cat in a situation where he may not be happy with the direction where the organization is going.
It's kind of surprising, and it's very telling to see of like Karl-Anthony Towns is their franchise player. They just made a huge move in the organization, and before doing anything else, they didn't inform him of it. They didn't really. I mean, I don't know what their situation over there really is, but like they don't get his feedback, and the way he hears about it is from the media. At the same time, everyone else hears about it. That tweet when he said WTF, very telling that like maybe we did hear the report, I think a few weeks ago, that Karl-Anthony Towns and Anthony Edwards were untouchables. I
Hmm.
wonder now this firing, is that still the case? I think that's something that we can still see. Also, I wanted to report I just saw like I think from an hour ago, it was posted on like Instagram and all this stuff. I think it was Sam Emiko. He was saying that it's expected that next week the trade for Ben Simmons is going to happen.
Oh
So
wow. And
so
he's been a big part of that whole
yeah.
conversation since the beginning.
hmm
So
He's pretty reliable. He's a pretty reliable source. So it said it's expected that Ben Simmons is to be traded by next week. So hopefully next week we can have even more Ben Simmons talk. But what I wanted to talk about also with Karl-Anthony Towns is a conspiracy. So this actually kind of helps my conspiracy even more because of this whole situation of the firing. And maybe he's a little unsettled there. Maybe he doesn't want to stay in Minnesota. So last year, in March 2nd, 2021, there was a report from Brian Windhorst, pretty reputable guy. He came out and said this was during the Knicks. They were having I think this was during their winning streak, or they were doing very well. It was shown that they weren't going to be one of the worst teams in the league, and they're actually going to be a playoff team come playoffs last season. Brian Windhorst came on TV and he said that it's expected right now. He's hearing that there is a specific player that he hears that wants to force his way to New York. I think it came out not too long ago or so. That player was reported to be Karl-Anthony Towns. So now this is interesting with all this stuff happening. Also, it was very odd, like maybe last month, maybe 2 months ago, there was a video from Bleacher Report. And very random, it was Karl-Anthony Towns and Julius Randle just hyping each other up. Did you see this video, Jeff?
saw this video. Yes,
It
I
was
did see the
it
video.
was the most random thing ever. When I saw it, I didn't really think much about it, but now all this is happening. I'm putting two and two together, and like during the video, Karl-Anthony Towns is like, I respect Julius Randle so much. He's such a great person, great player, great father, great everything. And then it cuts to Julius Randle, and I quote, he said, he's someone I love to play with because I believe our games mesh so well. And it's kind of like, why are there just these two random guys hyping each other up in Bleacher Report doing this? I mean, sure, they could be friends behind the scenes, but now you have specifically Julius Randle as well saying, I believe we can play together and I hope we can play together someday. And now, my thoughts are, so everyone's talking about potentially Damian Lillard coming to the Knicks. After seeing what New York did this last offseason and signing Kemba Walker, re-signing Derrick Rose, and all this. They have quickly still. They kind of have a logjam with their point guards, and it's very awkward if they did a Damian Lillard trade. Now you have Kemba Walker still on the team. You probably still have Derrick Rose on the team, and it's a very weird kind of logjam. But what if that package you were gonna do for Damian Lillard, you did it for Karl-Anthony Towns? What do you think?
You got my mind thinking about all the options and possibilities. And you know what? Honestly, I'm trying to see where there's a way you get them both. I'm trying to see if there's a way you could make it possible to get them both. But and based off of the contract, looking at what Towns is under right now, he still has 3 more years before he's an unrestricted free agent. So it would be by way of trade that it would have to happen, which almost essentially kills the Damian Lillard thoughts of having both of them via trade, right? So no, I think since the beginning, Karl has been talking about how he was a Knicks fan growing up. He talks about his affinity to the city, being a part of being near home, and then even and this is such a tragic thing to bring up, but like the passing of his mother, he spoke about how that brought a new importance to family and stuff in regards to that. So I see and I understand if he like someone like that wanting to get closer to home and then not only coming home, but coming home to your favorite team is something that I'm sure every star player would want to have done in their career. We're looking at Kyrie did it. Kyrie's just done that, you know? So I think it's feasible. Is the TWolves ready to do that? Are the TWolves willing to do that? And what are the Knicks willing to give to get him?
Yeah, it's this is where I was kind of thinking of like this is probably going to be on the same lines of the Dame kind of trade of like you trade every first round or a lot of first round picks that you have, probably most of them, maybe you keep 1 or 2, who knows. Every pick swap you trade, now you can probably trade a player like Mitchell Robinson. You have all those rookies that you have that are really good. Potentially try to keep RJ. They're going to want RJ. See what happens there, and you do the salary filler and all that. That's looking at the landscape. Honestly, to me, that's probably more realistic than actually a Dame trade. And exactly what you're saying, like Karl-Anthony Towns is from New Jersey. The family thing I think is actually a big thing. And then we already had like the report from Windhorse. At the time, he wasn't saying who that player was, of like that person's already asking to go to New York. There's already some talk there. I wouldn't be surprised if we see something like this in the next. This trade would have to happen, I think, after like December, like all the contracts finalized. That's when they can be traded. So it'd have to be after then, maybe next off season. See what happens. But very, very interesting to see. Maybe that's a possibility. And that's a possibility I don't really see anyone talking about. But there's some smoke there. There's some smoke. And when there's smoke, there's fire.
Well, based off the contract, just that conversation that you were saying, I think he signed his extension like about 2 years ago.
Yes.
So as far as like trading him, I think they're good to go. Like once again, there might not be a 1-to-1 trade here for a guy like Karl-Anthony Towns. They're gonna need to pull a third, fourth team to help make this a little bit more enticing for the T-Wolves. But once again, it comes down to we're in a point where players can force their way out a little bit easier. and they can not only force their way out a little bit easier, they can force their way out to the best position that they want to be at
Yeah.
easier. We had a lot of conversation talking about the Sixers wanted to give this and that to get Harden, but Harden's mind was sold on the Nets, and
Exactly.
we saw the reports. We knew that that was what he wanted to be a part of. He had thoughts of being on another team, but he wanted to be on the Nets. And more often than not, that thought process is if you give us your number one team, you're going there nowadays, rather than
Mm-hmm.
it's a crapshoot and you pick four teams and forget about your four teams. I'm choosing the team that gives me the best assets because you're just going to tell them I'm not going to play, and
Yep.
there's a lot of leverage with that in mind now too. But it speaks to something even beyond the Carl situation, but something I was looking at the other day. I believe it was Rob Lowe. Don't quote me either. It was Rob Lowe that put this on on his like he tweeted this out,
Zach
and
Lowe?
he was mentioning either it was Zach Lowe. Yeah, it was Zach Lowe.
Got it.
But but he mentioned how it's becoming a problem in the league that guys midway through their contracts are asking for trades. And that's definitely going to be something they start considering in the next CBA agreement. I'm sure the owners are going to bring that up, but it really is a problem when we're seeing guys midway through a contract that they sign not fulfilling their agreement to it and saying, I need to get out of here. I'm done with this. But I don't think it's as big of a problem for star players. We look at the guys like the LeBrons, we look at the guys like the Kevin Durant's. Those guys honor their contracts and stay through. They may take shorter contracts, but they stay through.
Yeah, we're like you're saying, we're seeing it more and more these days, and already we're seeing it with like there's talks of players that haven't even signed their extension. They're still on their rookie contracts, like Zion. There's a whole thing about Zion. His family doesn't want him to be there. He don't really want to be there. There's so much, and like there's already talks of him potentially be traded. This man's still on his rookie contract. The team has all the control here. They can do everything that they want, but still it goes back to like the player has zero leverage other than kind of being like, I'm not gonna play. That's a huge thing. It definitely, I could see it happening. It's gonna happen more and more. We're potentially seeing this with Luka as well. There's already talks about him after he's going to sign his extension, but after he signs his extension, maybe he's not. There's already talks of him not being happy in Dallas, and then there's potentially of him like wanting to go to. I was hearing from like a Dallas podcaster, or Dallas Mavericks podcaster, of like Luka has a lot of ties to Miami. Like he loves Miami. He wants to be in Miami. He idolizes LeBron. Like that's a huge thing for him. And if he can play like in a similar place to like as LeBron, it travels close for him to go to home and all that stuff. We're gonna see this more and more, man. There's already so many talks, and like these guys, they still have so many years on contracts. Guys are about to sign extensions. There's already rumors and all this talks. This never happened 5 years ago. No one can ever get out of their contract except for maybe if you're a year away, if your contract's gonna expire that year, or if you have 2 years. That's the time before of this guy can actually be traded. Let's talk about the rumors and all this. Now we're seeing this as soon as they sign their extensions.
Yeah. It really is becoming an issue, and like I said, it's something that they may have to address during the new CBA agreement.
Yeah.
I do miss the age of being able to have like a hometown hero. Granted, that's just not what the league is anymore. But at the same time, if we could get a semblance of something that looks a little bit more like that, rather than every 2 3 years, it's a shuffle of the boards with star players. You know, I would say it would have been great if it meant that there was parity coming out of it, but for the most part, it's not, meaning that there's parity in the league. So um, it definitely needs to be something that's addressed. And then, granted, as much as I bring up parity, we all understand there's not going to be 10 teams contending for a championship in
Yeah.
1 year, you know? But if you could get even the semblance of 4 or 5 rather than just two, because at this point, that's what every year we go in there thinking it's just two. And
Mhm.
then either we get shocked like this year, or we get confirmation that it is what we thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
as it was with the Cavaliers and the Warriors in that 4 year stint. I believe
It's
it was four, right? It was
yeah.
4 years.
It's refreshing as an NBA fan. And I would assume if anyone's listening, you're a Cavs fan or a Warriors fan. To you probably loved it. It was probably the best years of your life. Great for you. For the rest of us right now, this last season is like so refreshing to not see Curry in the finals, to not see LeBron in the finals, to not see all these guys that are always there year by year. We have someone new. And now we have a new champion. We have all this stuff. There's a lot more competition. I think it's better overall for the NBA. There's a lot more talent coming in. It's very exciting. So we have training camp coming up soon, September 28th. This next Tuesday. Hopefully our next podcast. Or this one, we actually had some pretty fun news. A lot of times it's like in the off season, we're gonna have to speculate a lot, and there's a lot of what ifs kind of scenarios and talking about the past. But now we're getting into the NBA season. It's gonna be a lot more news. We're excited to bring a lot of content to you guys, and hopefully this is gonna be a fun year.
It definitely will, Brian. I'm ready for it. I'm ready for training camp. Started to see a couple news. My boys are heading out west. They usually do for training camp. So I'm ready. I'm ready.
It's
Ready for
yeah.
2021.
And then we have preseason coming. October 3rd is the first game. That's Lakers. That's gonna be
Yes,
huge. That's gonna be
I
huge.
definitely will.
That's it wasn't my NBA Finals prediction, but it was Jeff's NBA Finals prediction from last episode. So we can see this is maybe we see who's the potential champion of
Yep.
next season. All right, so this is going to conclude, our second episode of For the Love of the Game podcast. Be sure to follow us on all our podcasts, wherever you can find us. Spotify, Apple Podcasts. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Peace.